Previously on Living Truthfully.
When a man expresses emotion, let's try not to shut him down. Let's try not to minimize whatever emotion he's expressing.
Invalidate it.
Yes. If he's expressing love, allow him to express it. If he's expressing hurt and pain, allow him to do it. If he's expressing anger, allow him to do it. Of course, all in healthy ways. It's in that step that even he is able to grow as a person, and whoever you are next to him, whether it's a significant other or a friend, your relationship grows as a result of that safe space as well.
Hi, Living Truthfully listeners, and welcome to episode 6 of Living Truthfully. It's a new year, and so happy new year to you. I am so happy at the beginning of this year because especially of the feedback that you have given me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for this feedback, that the conversations that have been started by what I did with Marcus Olang on the episodes 4 and 5, Truth is Not Neat, and even some of the feedback from the first episode, Healing Through Acceptance. I cannot begin to say how humbling that is. But what's crazy is that a lot of this feedback is also from my friends, and you have come and said, Amani, this is what I'm going through, and you've shared your stories, and I found myself almost in the counseling space. Well, I'm happy to share my opinions, but I think what I've also just gone through is realizing I still have stuff to deal with, and I still have issues that I have not resolved. And so I decided for the next couple of episodes, I'm going to invite someone who can actually help me and hopefully in turn help us with some of the issues that we're dealing with, and especially from a male perspective. And so, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode and the next one, we will have Dr. Oscar Githua. Let me tell you guys, you have not met an amazing human being like this one. He is the first forensic psychologist in East and Central Africa, and he's also an assistant professor of psychology at USIU Africa. The guy holds a doctorate degree in forensic psychology from California School of Forensic Studies in Los Angeles, California. And his qualifications are so many, I don't even know how to give all of them. But let me say, first, he's my friend. We were in school together at some point. But Dr. Oscar is also known for being a leadership team member responding to the devastating Garissa University College terror attack that happened a few years ago, and he provided trauma interventions for the affected students. This man has been at the forefront of drafting the Psychologists and Counselors Bill 2014, which was signed into law that same year. He has been at the forefront of doing research on matters psychology and mental health. He's been named Business Daily Top 40 Under 40. I mean, the guy is just like one super psychologist. And I'm honored to call him my friend. And guess what? He's here.
Wow.
In the studio.
It's really humbling.
No, it's true. And I'm so glad you came. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's my honor. I think that it's right,
It is. It is. And look, let's get straight into it.
Okay.
You heard my podcast. I sent you my podcast to listen to. And,
yes.
And you know a bit of my story because we've had these conversations with you.
Yes.
What was your first reaction?
Wow. I mean, first of all, I just think that the way you share your story is so authentic.
Thanks.
And it's so real. And it's time for men to stop veiling themselves in this societal fakeness. And when I say societal fakeness, it's not a judgment call. It's an expectation that people need to only show themselves when they're okay. What you've done Amani, for men in this country and even in the interwebs and everyone who's going to be listening is you've shown that men can actually be vulnerable and speak about what's really affecting them. My first reaction was like, this is genius and it's amazing, because for me, it is a space where we have to operate from, being authentic. My other reaction was, this is such food for thought and such food for conversation, because a lot of people are paining, they're hurting, and they don't know, they don't have an outlet of not even seeking help, but even just having the conversation. You see, what you've done is that you've opened up the space, and I respect what you've done with regards to saying that you're going to do it, you're going to lead the conversation, but that you're also going to commit yourself to having the right people in the studio with you and recording this podcast from a professional perspective. And yeah, I think, that is really what people need.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
You're about to start a podcast of your own.
Absolutely, I'm about that.
And I'm saying this on air so that I can set you up and make sure that you do.
Thank you.
And I want to say that you guys, when Doc starts his podcast, and I've asked that he has me as a guest,
absolutely,
on his podcast,
episode number 1,
yes, and he said he's gonna do a topic, why men cheat.
That's right. I said, you know what, I'm not gonna start. There's too many soft introductions, and I'm tired of them. And I'm a straight shooter, I'm a free thinker, I'm a radical thinker sometimes, even. But I think that if we cut to the chase, we'll have a more honest conversation.
Are you saying that there is a reason men cheat?
I'm saying that there's multiple reasons.
Okay.
and we'll get. I mean.
Okay. No, that's enough.
Yeah.
If you want to listen,
yes,
we'll be recording Doc's podcast soon.
Absolutely.
But I'm here to ask for your help as well. I'm dealing with my own. I'm in my head.
Yeah.
I've gone through depression. I don't know if I'm out yet, to be honest.
Yeah.
I sought help, and at some point decided to figure myself out.
Yeah.
I've made grievous mistakes.
Yeah.
But here I am.
Yeah.
And you're the shrink. I need help. Help me.
Great.
Help me.
So, of course, I think I need your listeners to understand that, first of all, that I've known you for many years. And in our practice, we normally ethically don't do therapy with our friends because of multiple relationships. However, what we could do is just basically pinpointing what might be some of the issues that led you to where you are. So, okay, I know a bit of your story. So I know that you were in a relationship you're married for 7 years.
I was married for about 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to go into your marriage. That's in the beginning.
Okay.
The marriage is where the symptoms show. But where the illness starts might be from the beginning. So tell me a bit about your family. Like, mom, dad, siblings, if you have any. Tell me if you are they around, were they around, and what was it like growing up?
So I was brought up by a single mom for the first 9 years of my life. But about 9 years, 8 years, 8 to 9 years. She got married when I was 8, going on to 9.
Okay.
To my stepdad. So I did not know my biological father, and I knew about him. I knew of him. I knew some things about him, but I did not meet him until I was 18. My mom and stepdad, who is a gentleman, and I consider him my father now, and I've named my son after him.
Okay.
Like an amazing human being. But they got now my brothers, my siblings, when I was 10. And so those have been, the siblings that I've grown up with.
Okay.
And that's the environment. My stepdad and I didn't see eye to eye for the longest time. I think that was my fault.
Okay.
He did try. He did try to be, to engage with me.
Okay.
But 10, I was a preteen. I was trying to figure out my own space as well, and then I became a teenager, and I was an angry teenager. I was not a troublesome one,
Yes.
but I was an angry teenager.
Okay.
And I was really in my feels in my teenage. And then I think when I got into my adult life, I started to engage with the guy.
Okay.
And in the last maybe 10 years, we've become really good friends.
Okay.
That's my family background.
Okay, great.
I don't know if that's useful.
No, it's useful. Very useful. There's the few things you've said that already have jumped out at me. So, do you know anything about biological dad?
I do. I know him. I met him when I was 18.
Okay.
He's around. He's a contributing member of the Kenyan Society.
Okay. Okay.
He has another family.
Okay.
I did really hope for a relationship with him. And so when I met him, I really thought that would be the beginning of this relationship and connection with him. But I think his family obligations with the family that he has now made that hard, or whatever that prioritization would look like.
Okay.
And so I went through a disillusionment of finally meeting him, finally starting to engage, and then realizing that it might not be what I was hoping it would be. And I don't think he has actively rejected me.
Yes.
But he's also not been involved, and we really don't have a father-son relationship.
Okay. Wow.
That was a big one when I knew I was going to have a son.
Yes.
Because one of my dilemmas was, who do I name him?
After?
And so do I name him after my biological dad, who I've met, and now I know where my roots come from, and that's where my Maranga name comes from. Or do I name him after this guy who's brought me up, and now we've started to form a good relationship, and he's still the husband to my mom and the father to my brothers, and I eventually made the call to name my son after my stepdad.
Yes.
And I'm so glad I did, because he's been a wonderful grandfather to my children.
That's great.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, so that's pretty compelling to me, and there's a few reasons. You're now speaking as Amani, who's, I'm figuring, about 37, 38. 37, right?
Turn 38 this year.
Turning 38 this year. What that means is that you are looking back with 2020 vision, and that's why you can say it that way. I want to go back to when you're 9 years old. When you're 9 years old, you're this kid who's been brought up by a single mom. Let me speak to the women who listen to your podcast. Women cannot raise men. And I know that sounds controversial, and a lot of people...
But I believe it.
Yeah?
I believe that women cannot raise men.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, there's a gap already. She's doing the best she can. She's raising a child. Because to you, you're her child. But you're also this man in a boy's frame growing up. And then she brings another man home, who, of course, you've said is an amazing man. But here's the thing about children. Children always want to side with the side of truth, or the side of the true north, which is what they feel inside themselves intuitively. What that means is that for you, you'll be like, is this my father? Whether or not somebody comes and tells you that this is or is not your biological father, you ask yourself, is this my father? So, yeah.
I think I rejected then. Yes. I remember rejecting then the idea that this man is my father.
Absolutely.
Because I knew he wasn't.
Yes.
I knew he wasn't my biological dad. That one I knew for sure. I did feel like I was not given a chance to speak into this conversation.
Yes.
So I remember actually feeling I was played.
Yes.
Mom should have asked me whether...
And because, that's, Amani, and you see, this is what the problem usually is. When adults make decisions, and children are only there to be observers. And so while they're the ones who are responsible, they owe a conversation to their children, that children are actually human beings coming up. So the first point of your heart and what we're going to be doing to take tally today is, apart from, I'm not talking about the days when you fell from wherever you're playing, you've been beaten, you've been fighting. No, I'm not talking about that. Or your mom yelled at you because you did something. I'm talking about those pervasive hurts that stick inside your psyche. And it's like we have a bank as human beings of hurts that we withdraw in the future.
Oh, wow.
What I'm trying to say is that then you deposited your first
Pain.
memory of pain psychically, and you deposited it. I've not been consulted. I've rejected this man. He's not my father. Then you now have to be the good boy because of that age developmentally. What's happening to you is that you're saying, but then I still need to follow the rules of the adults and to continue to live here and to survive, I have to listen to everything they say. Then they bring along some joy, your siblings, and that's a good thing because children are somehow pure and they introduce this purity. And know what your siblings did? They sanitized your stepfather for you. He now was not just a passerby, he was a committed person to your mom, and you are part of that conversation somehow by him sticking around. And why you can even call him a responsible and good man is because he's done that, and over the years he's proved to you that is who he is as a person. And by the way, this is in no way to fault either your mom or your stepdad, but to show you where now how we as human beings and how we perceive things and where they come from, where we now start loading up the heart.
Pain in the heart.
You talked about being an angry teenager. Do you remember a time when you were angry and what you did?
Yes. I remember a particular time. So I grew up thinking I still wanted to know my dad. I still wanted to know who my father was. And I tell this story sometimes and I look back and I think it's surreal because I knew his name was Maranga.
Yes.
I knew what he did as a job.
Yeah.
And so, in those days, there was no Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Internet, to look up people.
But we had our version of Facebook. It was called the telephone directory. It was this
That's right.
book.
Yes, the yellow pages in the big one.
That had almost everybody's name if they had a postal address.
Yes.
And if they had a telephone number at home. And I narrowed down to 2 possible Marangas in my teenage.
Wow.
That could have been my father. And he ended up being one of them.
Wow.
So one of the things that I remember as a teenager is just seeking for my dad, like really looking for my father. Second thing is I remember being angry at my mom for my not having a father. And I did write on a diary I used to keep as a child. Some pretty angry things. And I called my mom a few names because of that. The fact that I blamed her for me not having a father. In high school, that was in high school. I remember contemplating suicide in high school. I've never told many people this, but I actually thought about it, and I was gonna take pills because I didn't think my life was worth it. All these people around would have their dads, and my best friend had a great relationship with his father at the time. I didn't feel like my folks were doing enough. They were doing what they could, but I didn't feel like they were doing enough for me. And sometimes, school was hard. What you're given for pocket money doesn't keep you going, and I feel like they're not trying. And anyway, so I contemplated. I did not attempt. The reason I didn't attempt is because at the point when I was really just having this conversation, I thought about my brothers, whom I love dearly, and I loved dearly. They're twins. And I actually remember one day thinking about my brothers attending my funeral and how heartbroken they would be. And I, in my mind, I don't know if it was a dream or it was just a thought, I can't remember, but in my mind, I saw them cry and heartbroken. And I couldn't stand that. And that's the reason I did not attempt.
Wow. Compelling, Amani. I mean, a lot of stuff is coming out, and it's not surprising to me. As an angry teenager, I think the listeners need to understand that teenagehood is about identity formation. And we're struggling between the question of who am I, what is my clique, but it's not just about who do I roll with and what do I believe in, but where do I come from. And so therefore your feelings of nihilism, of being nihilistic and not having meaning or a destiny, or that your life was not important, is not inconsistent with your experience. It didn't make any sense to you because you are seeing all these other people who are successful with knowing who their fathers were and all that. And remember, I mentioned that your siblings came to save your stepdad.
Yeah.
They saved you too, because you didn't take your life because of thinking, right?
Man.
Because of thinking about them. And then also something else happened to you. You turned into a sleuth. You are an investigator.
I was NIS.
Yes.
I can find you. I can find you.
Which means to me that as a teenager, probably playing the role of a detective is not what most young people are doing. They're busy troubling their parents, as teenagers should, and not wondering whether they're their parents. But if you were engaged with this, shortlisting to two people using yellow pages kind of a thing, knowing that, wondering whether one of them is, luckily for you, one of them turns out to be. But then here's the other thing that I want to bring to your attention. Remember we talked about expectation at some point? It starts setting you up.
Setting me up for what?
For disappointment. Because now there's an ideal situation which you're crafting of who your dad is, because you don't live with him, you don't know him, and so to you he's Superman. To you he's this amazing guy.
I had this image of what
he could be, he could be, and who he was. And so you're like, my mom is the one standing in the way of me knowing this superhuman being. Then when you finish high school, when you're 18, you meet him.
Yes, I did.
And how was that like?
What? This is Living Truthfully.